Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Season 5, activating Starseeds, walk-ins, and the new human of the Golden Age. I'm your host, Washela Sananda, and it is my pleasure today to introduce you to the delightful Alan Steinfeld. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Shayla. It's great to be here with you. It's great to see you in person as opposed to on Zoom, too, a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, that was so
Yeah.
fun. We got to meet in person in Sarasota, Florida, where I live. So and I have to say, you are such a delight in person. I mean,
Thank you.
you just have
I hope
this.
I'm a delight on Zoom, too. So, yeah.
You are, but
Okay.
there's an extra special thing about getting to meet in person. You're just all heart and you're so generous and loving and fun. And I'm so glad that we got
Well,
to meet in
it's
person.
fun to communicate these new ideas to people and share and exchange and just build a level of new consciousness. So that's really fun for me. Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So before we jump in, I am going to ask you to ask everyone to join me in a short alignment process so we can get present and focused and anchored for this conversation. So just begin by closing your eyes and tuning into your breath, deepening the breath into the belly. And with every breath, becoming more relaxed, more present, and more focused. And now tuning in to the heart center and the light within your heart. Feel that heart light expanding out and up to connect with the light of central sun, the heart light of central sun, and then bring that down through the top of your head, through your body, and then continue down into the heart of the center of the earth, the heart of Mother Gaia, bringing that energy up into the base of the spine, spreading into your body. And now joining and aligning the light from above, the light below, and the light within your heart, creating a holy trinity of light, balance, alignment, focus, and anchoring presence, so that when you're listening to this conversation today, you may take and use whatever is for your highest good. And thank you for joining me in that. And now I'm going to read a little bit about what Alan's been up to. Alan Steinfeld has been involved with UFO ET disclosure since his experiences as a young child. From that time, he realized that the only way for humanity to accept the fact that we are not alone is to shift our worldview, what we think is possible, about what we think is possible. In this way, he feels we must transcend the old limitations of our mind and tap into what is beyond mainstream psychology, beyond our education, our religions, and our political ideologies. It is only when we wake up to who we are as galactic beings that the cosmos will come to greet us in our magnificence. Alan is the host and producer of New Realities and has been for 30 years. He had a show in New York for 30 years and a very prolific YouTube channel called New Realities. You've got over 70,000 now, and growing all the time. And also a website named New Realities. And from this platform, Alan, I know you have interviewed everybody out there, every luminary in the world of health and consciousness and ET disclosure. And Alan's also been one of the main emcees at Contact in the Desert for, I believe, 7 years now. That's a conference that I hope to get to go to this year or next time it happens.
If they have it again, we'll see. Hopefully they will.
Yeah, I hope so. Yes. And as we mentioned, Alan is the author of Making Contact, which I have right here, the amazing book. And it's a wonderful book about, so much more than just about extraterrestrials. It's really about us and our expansion and evolving as human beings, which I know is what you're really all about. So yeah, let's dive in. I'd love to start with, kind of your history, your background. You are an ET experiencer, and in I think multiple ways. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your personal experience to begin.
Sure. Well, I think I was a hyperactive child. I'm glad they didn't have drugs for that when I was growing up. But, I always felt different than other people. I always felt like, I had a lot of friends, but I didn't feel like it was really fitting in. I always did feel like I was from someplace else, like my family, very nice people, but I was looking for something more. I was looking at the stars and the moon and the sun and wondering, how come no one talks about that? At least, everybody was just business, middle America and baseball and all that stuff. And no one was looking at the sky. No one, even now, not many people look at the sky. I wanted to be an astronaut. I had strange dreams when I was young. I felt like out of body dreams. Saw beings at my bedroom window. I felt like I learned to meditate when I was like 2 years old because I couldn't fall asleep and would just focus on the third eye. I don't know where I got that from, but then, see the white light. And that brought me into these altered states. I didn't know that's what they were, but looking back, I can see, oh, that's what I was doing. Now, I don't know where that came from. No one told me that. No one talked about that. I just intuited that. And that sort of also made me feel a little different than other people. So that's sort of my history. And I read a lot of science. In my chapter, in my book, I write about how I read science fiction a lot, which was a doorway into understanding reality in a different way. So I was always interested in perception, consciousness, why people see different things, and we're all looking at the same object, yet we see different things. And I realized that, the personality, the subjective realities influence what we see. And so this program I've developed, New Realities, is about extending the power of perception to see more that's in the world. That includes ETs, interdimensionality, dreams, things at the edge of the reality that we know. So looking at the edge of things, looking at the bigger view is something I've always been interested, looking in metaphysics and different shamanic practices and all levels of kind of what is the mystery that we're here in? What is that all about? And how can we understand it? But most people aren't interested in understanding it. So I've sought out people who are interested, and that's really been a difference for me. So that's sort of a little bit. I mean, there's more, but yeah, anything you want to know.
Yeah, well, that's a good start. I think so many of us who are, identify now as starseeds and walk-ins and things, we didn't feel like we belonged as children, or there was just this sense of like, what is this place and how did I land here and what am I doing here and all of those things, and like kind of watching the family circles and like, is this really my family, even though we love them, like this feeling of there must be more. And I want to ask you a question about, you said you saw, this happened to me too, by the way, as a child, you saw beings at your window when you were young. What type of beings?
They weren't actually scary. They were kind of, maybe they were alien. I don't know, but I do remember I had seen something at the window and I saw this little toy that had the same face, like it was a round face it wasn't a human face, but I had this little toy that was the same face that just came to me after I saw this thing at the window. So I thought, well, that's strange. That was kind of a confirmation that I did see something. So yeah, so there were round faces, little maybe slanted eyes, not much of a nose, but it was just like a glimpse. And it's then this little toy showed up. I probably was 5 or 6 years old. I said, wow, here's this being. So I don't know. Does that make sense there?
So you didn't have the toy until after you saw the being? It's like a
Exactly.
gift from one of them. How
It was a
interesting.
confirmation of, wow, you did see something. And I never forgot that. That was like when I was 5 years old. So it's like, oh, I know it's strange, right?
That's
I
incredible.
never thought about the starseed connection because that wasn't the term people used back then, but I always was fascinated by the stars. I always
Yeah.
were very interested. I still go out at night to the skies in Arizona, Sedona, and look up at the stars and see and wonder and feel they're much closer than obviously they are. So I don't categorize what it is I am or feel or whatever. I mean, a lot of people like to identify with things, but I'm not sure. So I just don't name it. We're all things, and we're also human besides. So that's how I feel about it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And whatever you identify with, you can always expand out and there's more, right? As we evolve in consciousness, there's always this when you step back, it's like, oh yeah, and I'm that, and I'm all of it, right? Um,
yes.
I
Yes, no, I like that. You have a great voice. You're good. You're a good interviewer and a good now. No, you have a nice quality to your voice because I've been doing lots of interviews and some people, you know, just ask the question and don't listen to the answer because they have a set of questions. And other people like you, like we listen and we have an exchange, and that's how I like to interview people, not with a preset, but let's see where the conversation leads and what
yeah,
comes up. So
exactly.
yeah.
That's my style. I mean, sometimes there are things that I want to make sure I fit in, but I like, here's how that happened. Just to share with you, I would watch interviews and something amazing would be said by the speaker, and then the interviewer would go to the next question and completely miss an opportunity to dive in. I'm like, I don't want to miss those opportunities. I want to
Yeah,
make sure I
yes, that's
ask those
very
questions.
smart. That's exactly why I don't have preset questions because, yeah, there's doors that open and you want to go through those doors for sure.
Absolutely. And you're a master interviewer, so I have a lot I can learn from you. Um,
Thank
and
you.
okay, so one thing I absolutely do want to talk about in your book, you mention the hybridization program and getting to experience being a father of hybrids and actually holding one or more. I'd love to hear more. Let's unpack that story because that's
Okay.
pretty
Okay, great.
juicy stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure when I was abducted, they did take genetics from me, and then about a year later, I was woken up in the middle of the night. This was also in a dream state by this thing rubbing on the inside of my leg and taking me out of that dream state, but in a kind of other state of consciousness. And this little being was placed in my hands with big eyes, but it looked like a deer. It didn't look like a human or an alien. It looked like a little animal. And so I'm given this thing and I said, that's weird. I mean, I couldn't connect with it. I couldn't relate to it. I just thought, oh, that's strange. Wonder what this is about. And then I woke up, or then I went back to sleep and then woke up. But it's just always stayed with me. So I think they wanted me to make that connection with that hybrid offspring that was part of my genetics. And I wasn't really prepared to do that because I didn't know what it was. And then, but maybe that was enough. I don't know. The whole thing is so strange, and nobody really knows what, maybe some people do, what it's all about. But that was my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you talked to Bashar, who said something. What did he say about you being like a great 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 grandfather genetically?
Yes, when I talked to Bashar said my genetics went into his line. So he thanked me for those generations. And that was a surprise. I knew it. So it was also another confirmation of what I had suspected when I was given this little being, whatever it was, that, oh, this is probably that. And then Bashar gives me that, so is that line that thank you, great, 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 whatever it was, because he's 300 years in the future, he says. So I thought that was another, like I said, like with the little toy confirmation, that's another level of confirmation. So if people think, some experience happened to you, look for these signs from the universe for confirmation. And in most cases, it's not your imagination anyway. It's like we have to trust, like you have, Waxella, our experience. Trust what you know. Don't doubt your own mind. Don't doubt your perceptions. Of course, it can be not always accurate, but we're better off believing in them than not believing them.
Absolutely. Washela, just so the X is like an SH.
Where's that from?
It's Mayan. It's a Mayan.
You don't look Mayan.
Well, I have a whole story around that, but this is
okay. But we'll do that when I interview you. Okay,
that's a different interview. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, I think. Let me just tell you. I think those that hybrid program started with my grandmother, at least before that, on my mother's side, my grandmother, my mother, and then me. And each generation, the genetics are fine-tuned a little bit. So when they get to me or you, it's more easily integrated into the ET gene pool because it's been modified for 3 or 4 generations. And then there's a fit, that's how I see it. That's so, each generation also is modified genetically to be closer to what those hybrids are. That's how I understand it. Yeah. Was your mother and grandmother, were they experiencers as well?
Well, my mother always denies this stuff. And she has a strange phobia about cats. And I say to her, what is it about cats that scares you? And she says the eyes. So, and then my grandmother, I just think, my mother lived in New York most of her life, but she lived in Arizona in Tucson because of asthma in 1947, right at the time of the Roswell crash, when everything was coming down. And they used to, her mother, my grandmother, used to get lost in the mountains of Tucson. I said, lost? How could you get? She goes, yeah, we just would, she didn't quite say missing time, but I got the sense that something had happened in that, that Southwest area. I mean, this is just my feeling. I don't know if that's true, but I just get the sense that it is generations and generations that these beings follow you. So when they're ready to integrate, they can.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I agree.
And, most people are conditioned and brainwashed not to think about these things, even if they have vague memories of some kind of experience. And, if they would suspect it, the social consciousness says, no, that's not possible. And they discount it. And that's really why I wrote this book, so people can understand there are levels and levels of this phenomenon, and just plug in somewhere and let a new reality be revealed to you as you understand what people have experienced and researched and made sense of for the last really 75 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And along those lines, you've talked about kind of that state of being in between dreaming and awake. And I want to dive into that a little more, because I find that to be such a powerful state. And that's where most of my experiencing, well, much of it has happened there as well. And you also talked about dreams and the importance of these powerful dreams, the ET contact dreams that stick with you, they don't just fade away.
My theory is that these beings don't exist in the physical reality that we exist in, because our physical reality is conformed by our mental state, by our conscious state. And as human beings, we're very sort of dumbed down to limit our senses. But so when these beings show up in your reality, my theory is it immediately shifts us into an altered state of consciousness. You can't be with them. And I mean, maybe some people are, but in my experience, you can't be with them and be in your normal state of awareness. Some people talk, some abductees, contactees talk about the Oz effect, where reality just shifts. A more extreme version of that is trauma, where reality is so different that people experience trauma and post-traumatic stress. And these are in the severe abduction cases. You read Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. So something happens in the presence of these other consciousness, because their emanation of the conscious sphere is so different than how we think. There's a distortion in our field, and that distortion creates a distortion in perception and consciousness, as if you're drunk or high or something like that, where but even more extreme. So the best thing is to practice lucid awareness. That's probably what you're doing. That's why you're able to stay more conscious in these encounters, because you have to practice lucidity, I feel, and the interactions in these other levels of reality, in order to be on equal footing with these beings, or else we'll just go unconscious or be traumatized. But if you can meet them in these altered states, and what we call dreams is the closest thing to understanding this interface between these realities, but they're not really dreams, because dreams, of course, you forget as soon as you wake up in the morning. This is just another level of consciousness. And if we were more conscious in those states, we'd get a better understanding of who these beings are, what they want, their level of communication. So that's the practice, being as conscious as possible in altered states of awareness, and way beyond drugs. People say they do drugs, but that doesn't do it, because that is a kind of artificial distortion. What we want is to stay lucid in the alpha and gamma and delta states. So our brain waves may drop, but the awareness can be present. And then we can meet these beings, because their brain waves, I would think, or whatever those things, their brains are not, whatever the frequency is, it's different. And we have the ability to be there. We just have to practice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, are you in an altered state when you meet these beings?
I would say yes. I think so. Yeah. I mean, sometimes they show up when I'm quite grounded in 3D, but
oh, that's good. That's great.
I've had a lifetime of interesting experiences. So, but I want to talk about how the importance of that expanded perception for making contact. And is this something that you teach and share and help people do?
Well, one way I teach is through remote viewing. So I teach people how to tap into their right brain to access these other realities, but also the Close Encounter 5, the CE5 sessions that Stephen Greer was doing. You take people into deep meditation and have them send out love, and these beings would appear in these other realities. So yeah, we need to shift consciousness for these beings to appear in our reality. So yes, that is definitely something I like to practice. And I think just accessing different parts of our awareness will tune us into what's also out there, So remote viewing, we're looking at how the right brain perceives without the dominance of left brain. So the left brain wants to make something into name things and give nouns. The right brain is fine floating in the abstract awareness. So I've developed a whole talk about how to communicate with these beings from abstract awareness, from quantum awareness, I call it. Quantum physics, as opposed to Newtonian physics, keeps things more like a wave, more like everything moving, where there's no set position. Everything is in superposition. So there's no collapsing of the wave function. Everything is abstracted. It's apprehension versus comprehension. You know the difference. Apprehension is where things change into one other things, but comprehension, you say, this is what it is. So I think if thinking with the right part of the brain or accessing, we gain a greater perception, and we don't say, I know what it is, because the left brain is always looking for a logical explanation of reality. And in a way, there is no logic. We fabricate logic to make the linear part of our minds, happy, but the other part, the other half of our brain is to go beyond, transcend the rational into super rational, not the irrational, but the super rational, where you include both possibilities. You have a foot in both worlds. Yeah. And then with remote viewing, you can know anything. If you're really clear and empty and letting go of the personality, you can know anything that you care to tune your consciousness to. And you can get to meet ETs, you get to do all that, but it takes undoing the whole program that we've had since we were, a child to get to that state.
Yeah. So can you share like some of your favorite remote viewing experiences that you personally had?
Well, yes, thank you. There was a time where I was leading a class and I said, okay, just for fun, I'm saying we're going out to the stars and into this other planetary sphere. And I didn't expect to see anything there, but I saw these very strange, thin, they weren't like anything I had seen before. They were mostly like, if you ever saw Kamara Jones's images, you know who she is?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So when I had this vision of these beings, and then I saw another confirmation. There it is. After I had this remote viewing of these beings on this planet, then I saw Kamara's pictures. And I was just fascinated by them and said, that's what these looked like, these thin beings with just eyes, no mouth. And it's like, I saw that in remote viewing before I saw those drawings that Kamara does in her transmutation series. And that was, another confirmation. Strange, all these things are coming up. I never thought of it that way, but you're bringing it out in me. You are. I'm making these connections to these experiences and later things that made sense there. So that was strange. So yeah, but we can go anywhere. Your consciousness is not contained in your body. Who we are is, in a sense, extraterrestrial. The body is of the earth, but the consciousness is not. It is not local. It is everywhere at once. So it's like a radio signal. The radio is picking up the signal and then broadcasting it, just like your brain is picking up the signal of who you are, because who we are, is everywhere. And we think it's localized in our brain, but the brain is a receiver and a sender, but is not the generator of consciousness. Consciousness, and a personal level through the soul spirit experience, uses the localized, like your phone, uses your phone to get the signal to then broadcast and talk, but consciousness is everywhere. Who we are is everywhere. It's like the net of Indra. We are at the center point of creation, with each point being the center point of creation. So that's how I see it. So when we choose to focus this attention anywhere in time, space, past, present, or future, we can access it if we clear the old programs that are in the way of this infinite consciousness. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I like your explanation and how you're bringing like the science of the left and right brains too.
Yeah, I think so. I think the right brain is the connection to the oneness, and the left brain is the personality program that needs to live in this world to function. And I mean, I think Einstein said the logical mind will get you from A to B, but the intuition will get you everywhere else. So it's like that.
Yeah.
We are, but we need to be both, because if you're just right brain, you just stand there staring at existence, and you don't have to go anywhere because you are everywhere. And so the left brain gets you from A to B, or directional, or points. So it's linear, but so it's things in the old way of looking at were dualistic, right? Night, day, black, white, man, woman, up, down. In this new level, it's both and, it's not one or the other. This is the next level, fifth dimension, if you want to call it that. Ways of understanding reality is to think of things not dualistically, but inclusively. And that opens up other avenues of the brain, actually connects to the right brain even more, that says, oh, it can be both. You can be looking up and down at the same time. I have a whole PowerPoint that shows how that's possible. So we need to activate this other ways of knowing. That's one thing I also often quote John Mack says. He says, if we're going to understand the UFO phenomena, we need to have other ways of knowing. Other ways of knowing means getting out of the logical mind, the rational, the mind that's been conditioned to think in boxes, and tap into another way of thinking. Mm-hmm. Do you know who John Mack was? Do you know that name?
No, I don't.
He has actually a chapter in my book. He was a professor of psychiatry at Harvard who started to work with people who claiming to have abductions. And first he thought these people must be crazy, until he actually met them and said, these people are having a real experience, a valid emotional experience. He couldn't confirm that what they were experiencing, their contact, was real. He just noticed a pattern of people saying the same thing, having the same intense emotional experience. And he said, these people aren't crazy, and validated their experience. So like you, if you tell me you've been somewhere or had this incredible experience, I'm not going to doubt your experience because it wasn't my experience. But we can't doubt other people's experience, because that's their personal view of reality. So if someone says, there's only an objective world, then they're missing their own subjective reality, and they're discounting their own subjective experience. We'll maybe never understand someone else's experience, but that doesn't mean it's not true for them. It doesn't mean it's not true at all. So I was saying, where your reality and my reality intersects is this common shared sense. That's where we're together. That's where our consciousness joins together. It's like the Vesica Pisces, that place in the middle. But there is really there's no ultimate objective reality. There's just what we believe to be true. And John Mack confirmed this with these people's experience. So John Mack, the professor of psychiatry at Harvard, validated the abduction experience and said, these people are having a true experience. So it was quite controversial. Harvard said, you can't say these things are real. And he was brought in front of a tribunal. And then, of course, it was freedom of speech. They couldn't fire him for expressing his freedom of speech. And so he is was a champion of human rights, in a sense, human freedom of speech. So he has a chapter in my book. He died, I think, in about 2004, but there was an unpublished speech that he had given, and it was transcribed, and I got permission from his archivist and his family to reprint this in the book. And it reads very contemporary. I mean, it reads like it could have been written yesterday, because his big thing is worldviews. When we in our little community here meet someone outside our worldview, they say all these things you're talking about in the summit are impossible, because they are not seeing the bigger framework. We can see their point of view, but they can't see our point of view. So, I mean, not to say we're better, but we exist in a wider view of reality, a greater perception of reality. So that's our evolution. That's where we're going to. This is the new time where It's not subjective, objective. The dualism is also overcome on that level, where it's something else. We need to formulate a new set of understanding that includes both and, not either or, both and. So, so that's what I'm trying to communicate with new realities, new ways of perceiving the world that makes sense when we interface or start making contact. That is the thing, because we need to raise ourselves up to the level where we can communicate with these more advanced intelligences that are not greater than us. They're not really, what's advanced is their way of thinking. I think we have the same equipment to access that. We just have been locked into a limited way of seeing. And when we meet these other beings, we need to go to their level of perception in order to communicate. It's like I always say, when you're talking to your dog, you're not barking at them. You're talking at the more evolved level. You're talking to them in language that's our language. I mean, so that's what I think making contact, one aspect, is about. Using our minds in different ways to communicate in other levels of reality. So, and we need to do that collectively too. And so that's part of my thesis. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're about, the new realities and the expanding of consciousness. I wanted to mention about when you were talking about remote viewing. I actually had an experience one time of being remotely viewed. When I used to do these psychic readings for clients way back, and I would go into meditation. I'd get their questions, go into meditation and ask the questions. And I was doing this for a client, and I saw, as I was going to sort of these places to get the information, what we would think of as a gray in sort of a viewing room. It was almost like there was like glass that he was looking through at me, so present, like more present than, he could have been sitting right at the dinner table. And it surprised me so much because I could see, and there's more information in those experiences. I could see that he was very curious about what I was doing, and he was watching me do it. And it startled me, and I left that place quickly. But you
could feel when he was looking at you, right? You felt that, and that's also part of this greater fifth dimensional awareness. When we feel the thoughts of other people, we're tapping into a higher level of reality. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, and realizing that what we're viewing is viewing us oftentimes as well.
Yes. Actually, Nietzsche said that when you gaze into the abyss gazes back at you. So yes. I think that might always be true if you're remote viewing something. If you're more aware, if someone's remote viewing you, you can feel their consciousness. And I think that's another level of our evolution, is using these psychic muscles, these psychic awarenesses. Like, you're around people who are thinking the same thoughts, or, just having the same idea at the same time, or not wanting to go to the same restaurant you want to go to, and all that, so, anyway, so. But that's part of our evolution, is trusting those parts of ourselves too.
Yeah. And I also want to comment on what you said about like really, really giving people space to be where they are, and that our perceptions are going to be in different places. And to like, just to pontificate that, I had an experience long ago. I was in Hawaii, traveling with a shaman, and light ships would randomly show up, especially in Hawaii. Something about Hawaii. So there's a light ship quite close and quite large. And I was with a group of 5 people. 3 of us could see it very, very clearly, and two of the people could not see it. And I had a conversation with a woman that couldn't see it, who was there. She's like, "You guys are crazy." Later, a week later or so, I asked her, like, "You really couldn't see it?" And she's like, "I don't believe in that. I just don't believe in that." And she's like, "You really could see it?" And she's like, "You just seemed crazy to me."
Well, that's saying it's not seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. Of course, you get people who don't believe any of it. And it's like all of a sudden they see something and they're shocked, they're just that's because there was a little bit of space open. But yeah, there's some people could be looking at the same parts of the sky and just will not see it because it's not, we only see what we've been trained to see. So if people are looking at something, they might not even see it. Often in my workshops, I play this video of this basketball game where these people, oh, did I show it at the talk you were at?
Yeah, I've go ahead.
And no, and there's this people playing basketball. I said, count the number of passes, and this guy in a gorilla suit walks across the court, the basketball court, and nobody sees it because they're busy counting the basketballs. And then, you know, I have to swear to people, it's the same video when I say, don't count the basketballs because they weren't trained to see. And it's so obvious once you know it, but if someone tells you it's not there, then 90% of the people don't see what's there. And I always think that's so interesting. Maybe I didn't see it when I first saw it, but you know, it's like we don't see reality as it is. We see reality as what we've been conditioned and programmed to see it. So my whole idea of new realities is that there's more than what we're programmed to see. So the new realities is stretching the power of perception to see what else is here beyond our brainwashed, conditioned mind. You know, basically, we're only seeing what Joseph Chilton Pearce called the semantic reality. We're only seeing what we have names for. So it's like you're looking at the map and you're looking at the territory and you're only seeing in the territory what's on your map. If there's something in the territory that's not on the map, you're going to ignore it because the map is what people use to judge reality, as opposed to throwing away the map and just seeing things for what it is, which is infinite, as William Blake said. If we could see reality as it is, it would appear as infinite. And those are the real mystics. Those are the people I look for. Those are people like you.
And you, Ellen. And it's ever expanding. I think that's anybody who explores consciousness comes to this understanding of like, oh, it's not that anything out there is expanding. It's as I expand, my consciousness expands, then it can include more. And then, and I think the same is true of science. As we expand our understanding of science to include more, then we discover new planets and, we have an expansion. We can see more. We can analyze more. We can experience more.
Right, you're right. The world is infinite. We're growing into our perceptions of the infinite. That's the thing. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's always there. It's just, we're working our ways through levels of expansion. I think that's what the evolution of consciousness is I think there's that Marcel quote. It's not in discovering new lands, it's having greater perceptions to see. So that's part of the evolutionary cycle. That's part of what making contact is about. These beings obviously have a technology or a consciousness to transcend time and space, and we still think that's impossible. So we have to get rid of what we're saying is impossible, because if we say it's impossible, there'll be no room for something else. So, and that's what I come up against in lecturing and doing my show. There's people who have been so conditioned by the mass media that they only think what they've been told to think, and they won't look outside the box. And of course, sort of where we have been the last 2 years, think this way, do this, right? Yeah,
there's a lot of science out there that is, it's being denied or just not seen, maybe.
And there's a whole other end of science that is just fabricated. When they call something junk DNA, it's because they don't know what it is, so it must be junk. So science is really scientism. Of course, there's great science, but a lot of what goes for science is the belief. It's not a fact, I often say when the Wright brothers flew in 1903, this one scientist said it was impossible because you couldn't get a heavier than air ship off the ground. It was just physically impossible. So it's like people need to stretch beyond what they know into what they don't know. I mean, so many things have been said to be impossible or seen from their particular point of view that they discount other things. You know, when Alexander Graham Bell said to the mayor of London, look, we have this great new technology. You just have to wire your city and people can get messages, because people weren't having conversations on telephones when it first began. It was like imitating the telegraph. So people would just say, give a message and hang up. And I don't know who thought of having the first conversation on the phone, but that person, you know, changed the technology. But the mayor of London said, no, why do we want to put all that work wiring our cities when we have messenger boys to deliver messages? So people, it's what I call the horse and buggy mentality. People are looking backwards in time. And you know who looks forward in time besides the mystics? This is my theory. I mean, I would say it's the artists. The artists are looking at the unknown. They're allowing the scope of reality to be filtered through their awareness so they can cognize something beyond what is known and bring a new song, a new image, a new dance into the manifested world, because they are not looking at the past or what's known. That's why, you know, new art's often rejected, because people don't know how to deal with it because there's no context for it, you know? And Picasso said, if it's known, it's already old. So we're looking for the unknown. That's really what I think we've incarnated for. Not to meet ETs, which is great, or all that, but to make known the unknown, to add to the manifested reality, add to it. Don't just confirm it, bring something new to the table. And that's really what's behind this book. Because if you read the introduction, I talk about the Greek word poiesis, which is where poetry comes from. Poiesis means bringing something into the world that's not been there before. It is accessing the creative mind through symbolic reality. So if you look at the cover of my book, between making and contact, there's a little star there. And that's an asterisk, which means little star. And that star, I say, is the point of making contact, because whenever you think that symbol means, that's your level of interpreting reality. So it means symbols do not have a specific meaning. They're more like what I talked about before, abstract ways of thinking. So, you know, it's a difference between signs and symbols, and there's whole lectures about that. But if we think more symbolically, where we don't quantify the interpretation, but let it have a multiplicity of meanings, this is the language, I think, of the higher consciousness. This is the right brain. This is the quantum realities. This is the superposition. This is the wave versus the particle. And this is what we've been developing as a culture, which is why we're having more sightings, more interactions, because there is something changing in humanity, in the way we're thinking about the world. I mean, we have a long way to go, but we're breaking free of the past and looking towards a new unknown future. Because one more thing, whatever we think these beings are, we put them in a category. We say they're Pleiadian, they're Andromedan, they're Arcturian. Those are just labels that, for me, don't really hold up, because these are not about putting these beings in boxes, because even human is another box. We are infinite. We're part of all time and all space. So we're labeling a consciousness, and that's not who you're. Not who you're not your name. You're not just the body. You're not your history. You're infinite, like all of us. So I think we just have to think more like that we're infinite and we'll be ready to meet the others on an even playing field when we come into that engagement with this expanded consciousness. This is what I think, this is my opinion, they're waiting for us to do. That's why they haven't shown up, physically. Of course, they've shown up to lots of people, but to the mass consciousness is still stuck in an old way of thinking about reality. And that's okay. Everyone has their truth. So
yeah, I think the idea of making contact, I love how you put a positive spin on it, where there's so much media out there that will talk about abductions and the dark side of alien takeover or whatever you want to call it. And you're talking, you're really all about the conscious contact and the higher consciousness and the evolution of an expansion of our mind, and how that type of making contact is beneficial for everyone. I appreciate that.
yeah, of course, because the media likes to sell fear. People are addicted to fear, which is what we've seen for 2 years, constantly, the constant fear. So the unknown is not to be feared, because whatever we're thinking about the unknown is a projection of the known. It's all our fears. What the unknown, including these making contact possibility, represents things beyond what we can identify. The unknown is full of possibilities, exploration, invention, discovery. This is what the making contact experience is about. It's about going beyond who we think we are and what we think we know, and embracing the greater realities of the greater mind, of the superconscious mind. This is the next level of adventure that is awaiting us, the unknown.
Indeed. Yes. Yes. I love that. And I think it's a great note to end on. We're at the end of our time. So I want to make sure people know that you have a free offer. You're going to be offering.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm going to be offering the introduction to this book. I would offer the whole book, but then you wouldn't want to buy it. But no, the introduction is a real summation, because this book, Making Contact, is a collection of essays by the best people in the field. People have been studying this for 40 years, like JJ and Desiree Hurtak, like Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, like I said, John Mack, Grant Cameron. These are people who all have their different take, all have their subjective view. Nick Pope's in there. And in the introduction, I kind of lay out their perspective. And so the book goes from the external understanding of government cover-ups and nuts and bolts hardware, to the internal, to the consciousness level of reality, to what it means in terms of our human consciousness. So it's like, you may not believe any of this, but you may think, oh, maybe there's something out there. As you read the book, you're being pulled deeper and deeper into your own conscious awareness. So it kind of impacts you on deeper and deeper levels, because each chapter is another level of internal awareness, so that's how I laid it out. But the introduction gives you'll get a lot just from looking at the introduction to this book, because you'll want to read more, because it really is a turning point, I think, in history, is the idea that we have made contact, we are making contact, and making contact is possible for everyone once they open their minds to new realities. So that's why the subtitle of the book is Preparing for the New Realities of Extraterrestrial Existence, because the preparation is the knowledge that there's something to perceive. I mean, you need knowledge to have experience. If you have experience without knowledge, it's fine, but you don't know what to do with it. If you have the knowledge and then the experience, like if you have the knowledge of something out there and then you see it's like, oh, okay. Now, or you have the experience, then you have a place to put it within the categorization. You can have experience and just keep it floating. But like I said, we live on both sides of the brain. So experience, knowledge, cognition, and recognition are the keys to understanding the new realities of existence that we are coming into as a planetary race, as we meet the others, and we go beyond the old patterns of war, starvation, hate, anger, all these things that have trapped us. I think that time is ending and something else can begin.
Yes, indeed. Oh, and a ding.
On my phone.
Yes. Okay, so I'll be sure to have the link so people can get that in the show notes. And is there anything else you'd like to leave the listeners and viewers with before we close?
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate you and the open mind that you have in this. What's the name of this? It's the Alchemy of
Ascension, and then this particular iteration, season 5, is activating Starseeds, walk-ins, and the new human of the golden age.
Right. So that's exactly what I'm trying to understand. The alchemy of ascension is the expansion of the mind, because when you expand the mind, you expand your energetic field, and that then can give you experiences that are out of the ordinary, that are extraordinary, extraordinary. And as we raise our vibration, as we start to think of reality a little differently, we change all of the human race. We input a little energy into the collective consciousness. And when enough people have a shift, the planet wakes up to who we really are and have always been. And that's the real alchemy of our ascending bodies, is to wake up to who we really are and have that collectively, and keep working on yourself. We have to keep looking at those dark sides, those places where the human comes up, the human, the animal, and see why and transcend it. So it's always an alchemical process of turning the dark into the light, into the awareness, into the auric field, into the gold of higher cognition. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk about these ideas. And I think we are in an ascension wave, because more and more people are talking about this. The government has come out and acknowledged the existence of UFOs, what they're calling UAPs. So we're at a turning point in history, and we're right there at the threshold. So wake up to new realities and start to meet the rest of the cosmos. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Ellen. It's been delightful to have you on and have this conversation. I appreciate you so much. And I look forward to reading your book in its entirety. I know the viewers will love it as well. Yeah.
I think you'll really enjoy it. Let me know what you think, okay?
Absolutely, I will. Thank you so much.
Good to see you again.
Namaste.